Picture this. You're at dinner with friends. There's laughter, there's wine, there's conversation. Everyone seems to be having a good time. So are you, more or less. But at some point during the evening, in the middle of a pause between sentences, you feel something strange. A distance, as if there were an invisible glass wall between you and everyone else. You can see them, hear them, even laugh with them. But you never quite reach them, and they never quite reach you either. Has this happened to you? If the answer is yes, I want to tell you something important before we go any further. You're not broken. You're not too weird to connect, or too complicated to be understood. What you're feeling has a name, a psychological explanation, and, most importantly, a way out. Today, we're going to talk about something a lot of people experience, but almost nobody knows how to name. Loneliness within company. That feeling of being surrounded by people who love you, who know you, who even understand you, but only up to a point, as if they understand you at 60%, at 70%, and that last stretch, that deeper core of who you are, remains unseen. We're going to explore why this happens, what it says about your brain and the way you process the world, and most importantly, what you can do to feel truly accompanied, not just surrounded. Here's the first thing I want you to really feel. Loneliness isn't the opposite of being accompanied. It's the opposite of feeling understood. This changes everything, because we grew up thinking loneliness gets cured with more people. More friends, more parties, more messages in the group chat. But if you've ever been in a room full of people feeling completely alone, you already know that logic simply doesn't hold up. Psychologists call this emotional loneliness, distinct from social loneliness. Social loneliness is not having people around. Emotional loneliness is having people around who can't quite access the deeper layers of your inner experience. And here's the key insight that probably no one has explained to you before. The more complex, sensitive, or deep your way of processing the world is, the harder it becomes to find people who can follow you all the way down. Not because you're miscalibrated, but because deep connection requires two people to share a similar level of emotional depth, intellectual curiosity, or intensity of processing. And that, statistically, is rare. You don't feel lonely because something is wrong with you. You feel lonely because you're searching for a kind of encounter that requires more synchronicity than most casual bonds can offer. Let's add some science to this, because understanding the biological and psychological why is going to lift a huge amount of guilt off your shoulders. There's a concept in social neuroscience called interpersonal attunement. Basically, when we talk to someone, our brain doesn't just process the words. It tries to sense whether the other person is picking up on the emotional tone behind what we're saying. When someone understands your words but not your emotional tone, your intensity, your nuances, your particular way of feeling things, your brain detects it. Not always consciously, but it detects it. And it generates a subtle signal of disconnection, even in the middle of a pleasant conversation. It's like speaking two very similar languages that aren't quite the same. They understand you 80%, and that missing 20% is exactly where your true self lives. If you identify as a highly sensitive person, someone who overthinks, a polymath mind, or an emotionally intense individual, this is going to sound very familiar. Your nervous system is built to pick up on nuance, tones of voice, micro-expressions, hidden meanings behind words, connections between ideas others don't see. This is wonderful for creativity, empathy, and insight, but it comes with a cost. You perceive more clearly when someone is not picking up on those nuances. Where another person might feel satisfied with a superficially warm conversation, you notice the emptiness. Not because you're demanding, but because your emotional radar simply has higher resolution. We have mirror neurons that help us feel understood when we see our experience reflected in another person. When someone says, "I feel that too," and genuinely means it, your brain releases a sense of relief, of belonging. The problem is, if your way of processing the world is particularly intense, deep, or multifaceted, the mirrors available around you may only reflect part of you. They see you, but in low resolution, and a part of you, quiet, patient, tired, keeps waiting to be seen in full. Now, for the part that really matters. What can you actually do with all of this? First, learn to tell the difference between wide connection and deep connection. Not every relationship has to reach the bottom of your soul, And that's okay. Some people are for laughing, others for practical support, others for going deep. Try this. Make a mental list of your current relationships and ask yourself what you actually need from each one. Lightness? Practical support? Depth? Letting go of the expectation that everyone understands you 100% lifts an enormous amount of pressure, for you and for them. Second, practice progressive revelation. Many times we feel misunderstood because without realizing it, we're not showing our deeper layers. That's understandable. Showing yourself fully is scary, especially if you've been made to feel too much before. So instead of opening up completely or staying completely closed off, try sharing one layer more than usual with people who seem capable of holding it. Watch how they respond. Deep connection is built in layers, not all at once. Third, look for your people, not more people. Emotional loneliness isn't cured by quantity, it's cured by quality of resonance. This might mean seeking out specific communities, groups around high sensitivity, spaces for deep thinkers, communities of polymaths or neurodivergent people, group therapy, creative spaces. Sometimes it's not that your people don't exist. It's that you haven't found them yet in the places you usually look. Fourth, allow yourself to be understood in parts. One person might understand your humor, another, your ambition, another, your emotional sensitivity. This isn't a connection failure, it's human reality. No one has a single friend or partner who covers 100% of who they are. Expecting that from one person alone is a recipe for mutual disappointment. And fifth, learn to sit with yourself when no one else fully understands. This might sound contradictory in a video about connection, but it's essential. Part of feeling less lonely comes from no longer abandoning yourself when others don't fully understand you. Practice asking yourself, do I understand myself right now? Validating yourself internally doesn't replace human connection, but it does soften the pain while you build it. Now, I want to be honest with you, this doesn't apply exactly the same way to everyone. If you have ADHD, this sense of disconnection can mix with difficulties maintaining consistency in relationships, which adds another layer to the topic. If you're a highly sensitive person, you're likely to feel this disconnection more often and more intensely, not because something is wrong with you, but because your nervous system processes more social information than average. And if this loneliness is constant, deep, and accompanied by persistent sadness, it's worth talking to a mental health professional. Psychological insight is powerful, but it doesn't replace clinical support when it's needed. I'm not asking you to diagnose your experience with this. I'm asking you to understand it, which is the first step toward healing it. If you've made it this far, this feeling of loneliness surrounded by people probably resonates deeply with you. I want you to know something, and I want you to really sit with it. You don't feel lonely because you're hard to love. You feel lonely because your way of feeling the world has depth, and depth by nature finds less echo than the surface. That's not a sentence. It's information. The people who experience this kind of loneliness are often, precisely, the ones with the greatest capacity to offer deep connection to others, once they find it. Your sensitivity isn't a manufacturing defect. It's an uncommon frequency, and uncommon frequencies take longer to find their echo. But when they do, they resonate with a force that surface-level connection could never give you. Be patient with yourself. Keep showing up, in layers, with care, with the right people. And in the meantime, learn to be your own compassionate witness. So let's quickly recap. Loneliness isn't always about lacking people. It's about lacking deep understanding. Your brain seeks emotional resonance, and when it doesn't find it, it registers as disconnection, even when you're surrounded by others. Sensitive people, or those with deep processing styles, perceive this gap more intensely. And the solution isn't to force more surface-level connection, but to cultivate deep connection in layers with the right people, while also learning to hold yourself. If this video made you think, this is exactly what happens to me, know that you're not alone in feeling lonely. I know that sounds paradoxical, but it's true. There are countless people living this exact experience in silence. Thank you for being here, for staying until the end, for allowing yourself to feel this instead of avoiding it. That in itself is an act of emotional courage. See you in the next video.